This bank isn't for your kind. Get out." The words didn't stumble. They landed hard, clear, and cruel. In the marble lobby of Metropolitan Bank, silence cracked open like glass under a hammer. Clients turned. Pens stopped scratching. Even the hum of the printers seemed to stall. Behind the counter stood the branch manager, his face flushed, his arm thrust forward like he could shove her out with nothing but his finger. Across from him still, calm, unreadable, stood a black woman in a navy suit. No jewelry flashing, no entourage, no designer logos to beg for credibility. Just her, just presence, just silence. On the polished counter sat a brown leather briefcase, its brass lock glinting under fluorescent light. Two initials gleamed faintly. R. To most, it was just decoration. To her, it was identity. The manager's voice rose sharper. "You heard me. Leave now or security will remove you." And the guard to her right shifted, hand brushing the steel clip on his belt. His stance said threat before his mouth did. And yet she didn't flinch. Her breath was steady, her gaze unbroken. She glanced down at her watch, then spoke for the first time. "You have 2 minutes." Her voice was calm, but the words carried weight that bent the air, like a countdown nobody else understood. Behind them, a young woman waiting in line fumbled with her phone. She whispered into her camera. "This is wrong. I'm recording this. People need to see." The manager leaned closer, veins rising at his temple. "People like you come in here with fake accounts and stolen cards. Do you think a suit makes you a client? You don't belong here." The insult hung heavy, thicker than the smell of coffee drifting from the corner kiosk. It wasn't about her documents. It wasn't about procedure. It was about presence hers. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't argue. She let the venom curl in the room, then cut through it with 5 even words. "You mistake silence for weakness." The security guard's jaw flexed. The phone camera's red light glowed brighter. The initials AR on the briefcase seemed to burn in the fluorescent haze. 2 minutes. That was all she gave them. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe. These stories spark change. And we're glad you're here. Now, back to Alexandra Reid. She stood as if rooted into the marble itself, carrying history, carrying storms, carrying a truth none of them yet realized. She wasn't asking to be here. She already owned it. Alexandra Reid walked through the revolving doors of Metropolitan Bank at 9:03 a.m. The morning light caught the glass like a stage spotlight, but she didn't dress for performance. No luxury handbag. No gold necklace. Just a navy blazer over a plain blouse, black trousers pressed sharp, and that brown leather case marked with 2 small initials, AR. To strangers, she looked like another client with business to handle. That was intentional. Alexandra never came with bodyguards or flashing cars. She had built her empire on being underestimated, and today she allowed it again. She paused by the marble column, scanning the lobby with the trained eye of someone who had owned places like this before. The marble floors gleamed, but they couldn't cover the cracks of culture she already knew too well. At 25, she had been denied a loan in this very city, despite putting up triple collateral. At 32, she'd walked into another bank in Atlanta and been told to try a credit union, more her speed. And now, decades later, she had returned not as a seeker of approval, but as the owner of the vault buried 3 floors below. She stepped to the counter, voice calm, words precise. "I need to access the executive lounge. Transfer authorization under Reid Holdings." The teller blinked, hesitated, then pointed her toward the glass-partitioned area reserved for high-net-worth clients. He didn't question her ID. Not yet. But calm never lasts long in places like this. The branch manager spotted her almost instantly. His eyes narrowed, not at the documents in her hand, but at her skin, her suit, her silence. He started moving across the floor, jaw set, finger already lifting as if authority was a weapon. Behind Alexandra, a young woman shifted in line, phone raised halfway. She whispered to her friend, "Why do they always look at us like we don't belong?" The friend just shook her head. Alexandra placed the leather case gently on the counter, letting her fingertips rest on it like she was anchoring herself. Inside were contracts, acquisition files, and proof of ownership that could silence the entire building, but she didn't open it. Not yet. Instead, she breathed steady, watching the manager approach, voice building like a storm gathering speed. Your kind doesn't sit in that lounge. Step away now. And in that instant, the room changed. What had been marble and glass turned into a stage. Every bystander an audience, every word a verdict. Alexandra didn't argue. She checked her watch again, lips barely parting. You have 1 minute left. The security guard took a step closer. The phone camera's red light flickered brighter, and the initials AR waited, silent and heavy, holding the truth no one else could see yet. The manager's words hadn't cooled the lobby, they'd heated it, like someone turning up the thermostat with malice. He didn't stand alone for long. A junior banker slipped from behind the counter, her heels clicking sharp against the marble. She was young, barely 30, her posture rigid with a confidence borrowed from hierarchy, not earned. She folded her arms, scanning Alexandra's blazer like it was a disguise. That briefcase doesn't prove anything, she sneered. People forge documents all the time. You don't look like someone with 7 figures to move. Ugh. Her tone wasn't loud, but it carried, slicing the air like a whisper meant to wound. The security guard edged closer, shadow heavy across the floor. His hand now rested openly near his belt, no longer subtle. He leaned in just enough to murmur, but his voice carried, "Ma'am, let's not make this harder. Step aside before we escalate." Escalate, the word echoed, turning the marble lobby into something colder, more hostile. Alexandra didn't turn to him. She didn't dignify the banker's sneer with a reply. Her hand stayed lightly on the leather case, her eyes steady on the second hand of her watch. It ticked forward, relentless, indifferent to the theater building around her. At the far end of the line, a teenage boy nudged his mother. "Why are they treating her like that?" he whispered. The mother shook her head, lips tight, as if she'd seen this script before. The junior banker pressed harder. "If you really had clearance, you'd already be inside. Instead, you're standing here wasting our time. Are you hoping someone believes you?" Her words carried the smugness of someone who thought the crowd would cheer, but silence answered her. Silence, except for the quiet hum of a phone camera turning vertical. A young woman, mid-20s, now held her phone high. Her eyes were fierce, her lips pressed thin. "I'm recording this," she said clearly. "If you keep pushing her, the world's going to see." The banker scoffed, but her confidence cracked just slightly. The manager doubled down, voice raised, echo bouncing off marble. "This isn't a walk-in center. We don't cater to scams dressed up as business." The word scam lingered in the air like smoke after a match. A couple near the coffee kiosk shifted uneasily. One man whispered, "Feels wrong, really wrong." Still, Alexandra didn't move, didn't flinch, didn't blink. Her voice, when it finally came, was low, calm enough to cut louder than any shout. "You're wasting seconds you don't have." The guard stiffened. The banker frowned. The manager's face reddened. The crowd sensed it. The escalation wasn't just theirs. She was letting the storm build, letting their own words turn the walls against them. The countdown had already begun. The guard shifted another step closer, his shadow sliding over the marble like a dark tide. The junior banker crossed her arms tighter, eyes narrowed, waiting for a flinch. And the manager, flushed red with borrowed power, barked louder, "Security will remove you right now." The words ricocheted through the lobby, yet Alexandra remained still. She didn't raise her chin in defiance. She didn't wave her documents like proof. She simply stood, breathing slow, gaze lowered to the leather case at her fingertips. The initials AR caught the fluorescent lights, a soft glint against the storm. Silence wrapped around her like armor. The crowd expected shouting. They expected pleading, maybe a desperate reach for validation. Instead, they got something unnerving, calm. A calm so complete it unsettled the very people who had tried to break her. The guard cleared his throat, trying to mask hesitation. "Ma'am, I'm giving you a chance. Step aside, no trouble." Still, she didn't answer. Only her eyes moved to the sweeping hand of her watch. Another tick, another second gone. The young woman filming shook her head, whispering into her mic. "She's not even arguing, and they're still treating her like a criminal." The manager slammed his palm on the counter. The sound cracked the room like a gavel. "Don't play games with me. You have nothing to prove you belong here." Alexandra finally looked up, slowly, deliberately. Her voice was soft, steady, but each syllable landed heavy. "If I had nothing, I wouldn't still be standing here." The banker scoffed, trying to laugh the tension away, but it didn't spread. Not this time. Too many eyes were watching. Too many phones were out. The silence of the crowd wasn't compliance, it was doubt. She let it build, let their words echo, let the audience simmer in discomfort. She had learned long ago that the most dangerous weapon in a room wasn't fury, it was composure. At 26, she'd sat in a loan officer's cubicle while he labeled her high risk. She hadn't argued then either. She'd walked out, bought her first property in cash, and returned 3 years later to buy the very building that held his office. Silence had been her strategy then, and silence was her weapon now. Alexandra rested her palm flat on the leather case, anchoring herself against the tide. She didn't need to speak again, not yet. The lobby was charged now, heavy with unspoken things. Clients leaned closer, breaths shallow. Even the child by the teller desk tugged his mother's sleeve and whispered, "Why isn't she saying anything?" The mother answered softly, "Because she doesn't have to." Another tick on the watch. Another second closer to the moment they would realize who she was. Alexandra breathed in, slow and steady, and the marble lobby held its breath with her. The silence was no longer hers alone. It had spread, curling around the marble pillars, settling heavy over every bystander. At first, people only stared. A young man in a gray hoodie stopped filling out his deposit slip, pen frozen midair. A mother with her son clutched his hand tighter, whispering something in his ear. An elderly couple near the espresso counter leaned closer, trying to catch each word as if this were a trial, not a lobby. And then phones began to rise. The young woman who had already been filming lifted her phone higher, angling for a clearer shot. Her voice trembled, but it carried. "I'm recording this. She's calm. She's done nothing. And they're still threatening her." A murmur rippled through the line. Another man pulled out his phone, hesitated, then hit record anyway. His thumb shook, but his voice didn't. "This is wrong. I've banked here for years, never seen anything like this." The junior banker scoffed, snapping her gaze toward the cameras. "Go ahead, post your little clips. Nobody's going to believe some random woman belongs in our executive lounge." But her words didn't land the way she thought. Instead, they tightened the unease. A client in a tailored suit, seated in the waiting area, spoke low but firm. "Belonging isn't yours to grant." The manager's head whipped around, face redder now, but he didn't answer. The security guard glanced at the growing cluster of phones, his jaw clenching. Authority always felt simpler when unobserved. Alexandra hadn't moved. She stood anchored by her leather case, breath even, eyes fixed not on the hostility but on the crowd. She let them see her stillness, her refusal to bow to noise. She knew what had stirred the discomfort of those watching, the realization creeping into their bones. Silence, in the face of injustice, wasn't weakness, it was indictment. The young woman filming spoke louder, as if the courage in the room had found her spine. "Everyone can see what's happening. She hasn't raised her voice once. Not once." The mother with her child nodded. "And that's exactly why it's ugly." The boy whispered, "She looks like she's waiting." Waiting, the words settled over the room like a drumbeat. Waiting for what? The banker's smirk faltered. The guard shifted again. The manager slammed his palm on the desk once more, trying to regain control. "This is private property. If you don't step aside, you're trespassing. Do you all hear me? Trespassing." But his voice, though loud, no longer commanded. It clashed against the quiet conviction of the crowd, against the red glow of cameras capturing every syllable. And in that shifting air, Alexandra finally spoke not to him, not to them, but to the room itself. "Keep filming. The truth will need witnesses." "Oh." Her tone was soft, but it reverberated like a verdict already sealed. The phones stayed up, the eyes stayed fixed, and the lobby, once just a bank, had become a stage where justice or its absence was being written in real time. The weight of cameras changed the air, but it didn't soften the manager's tone. If anything, it sharpened it. His voice rose again, bouncing off the marble like a hammer against stone. "She's a fraud," he barked, loud enough for everyone to hear. "This woman is trespassing. She has no account, no verification, and now she's wasting everyone's time." The junior banker added fuel, her lips curled in disdain. "Look at her clothes. Look at that old case. Do you really think someone worth millions would show up like this? Please, she's here to con us." Gasps rippled through the crowd. A man in the waiting area shook his head, muttering, "You don't talk to clients like that?" The mother with the boy pulled her son closer, whispering, "Listen to how they speak. This is what prejudice sounds like." Still, Alexandra didn't rise to meet their anger. She stood unmoved, her silence heavier than their insults. The manager turned toward the guard, his order sharp. "Get her out now." The guard hesitated. Phones glowed brighter, their lenses following his every twitch. His jaw tightened, but his feet didn't move. The junior banker stepped closer to Alexandra, voice dripping venom. "You're a thief. You think carrying a leather case gives you access to this lounge. You don't belong in here. Not today, not ever." The words hit the crowd like sparks. A man near the coffee kiosk stood abruptly, his voice cutting the tension. "She hasn't done a thing. All of you are out of line." The banker snapped back. "Sit down, you're not part of this." But the man didn't sit. He folded his arms. His voice grew louder. "We all are. Everyone in this room is part of it now." The lobby stirred. Whispers became open words. Words became protests. The once quiet bank now hummed with unease, like an orchestra tuning before a storm. The manager slammed his hand down again, desperate to reclaim control. "You're all being manipulated. She's not a client. She's not verified. She's nothing but a fraud." That word fraud hung heavy, poisonous. Alexandra finally lifted her head, slowly, deliberately. Her eyes met the manager's unblinking. Her voice was calm, almost too calm for the chaos swirling around her. "You're not exposing me. You're exposing yourselves." The banker laughed, brittle and nervous. "Empty words. We'll see what security says." She reached for the desk phone, punching digits with shaking fingers. "Yes, we have a suspicious individual. Possible criminal activity. Send someone now." The line of her voice wasn't caution. It was triumph, as though calling the police was a victory, not a risk. Phones in the crowd caught every syllable. The young woman recording shook her head, speaking into her mic. "She gave them nothing but patience, and they called her a criminal." The guard exhaled slowly, the weight of the moment pressing against his chest. He still didn't move. Not yet. And Alexandra, still steady, whispered to no one in particular, but loud enough for the nearest phones to catch. "You just turned policy into prejudice, and the clock hasn't stopped ticking." Another second. Another step closer to a truth they weren't ready for. The manager's face was crimson now, his authority slipping through his fingers like sand. He turned sharply, eyes drilling into Alexandra's case on the counter. "That bag," he spat, "doesn't prove anything." Before anyone could react, his hand shot out. He grabbed the leather case, jerking it off the marble as if tearing evidence from a courtroom. The brass lock clinked against his ring, a harsh metallic note that silenced the room. Gasps rippled across the lobby. Phones tilted higher. Someone whispered, "He can't do that." The manager sneered, holding the case like it was contaminated. "People forge IDs, they carry props, and they think they can trick us. Well, not here." And with a vicious motion, he dropped it onto the floor. The case hit the marble with a crack that echoed far louder than its weight should allow. Alexandra didn't bend down. She didn't scramble to recover it. She stood as if nothing had fallen. The young woman filming shouted, "That's theft. You just destroyed her property." The junior banker smirked, adding fuel. "What property? It's fake. Probably empty. Just a show." But the initials AR glinted from the floor, stark against the sterile marble, as if daring everyone to read them. The boy tugged his mother's arm. "He threw her stuff," he whispered, wide-eyed. The mother's jaw tightened. "Yes, and now he's proving her point." The guard shifted uneasily, sweat beading at his temple. Authority had crossed into aggression, and the phones caught every frame. The manager leaned forward, voice booming like a gavel, desperate to silence a jury. "You don't belong here, not in this bank, not in this lounge, not anywhere near real clients. You're a fraud, and now everyone knows it." The words didn't just accuse, they humiliated. They were designed to strip dignity in front of witnesses. Alexandra's gaze never wavered. She looked at the case on the floor, then back at him. Her silence was so steady it became unbearable. Finally, she spoke. Not loud, not rushed, just cutting. "You just broke more than a case. You broke your own mask." The room froze. Even the banker faltered, lips parting like she wanted to reply but couldn't. The manager straightened, defiance masking the crack in his authority. "Call the police," he ordered. "Now." The junior banker, flustered but eager, lifted the desk phone again. Her words rang across the lobby. "Yes, we have a dangerous suspect. Possible fraud, attempting to steal funds. Immediate response requested." The crowd erupted in murmurs. Some gasped, Others cursed under their breath. The man near the kiosk muttered, "Unbelievable. She hasn't even raised her voice." The young woman with the phone turned it on herself briefly, her voice shaking. "They called her dangerous. She hasn't moved an inch. This is happening right now at Metropolitan Bank." The weight of the accusation pressed down on the room like a storm cloud ready to split. And still Alexandra did not move. Her watch ticked forward, relentless. The case lay at her feet, initials gleaming like truth waiting to be spoken. The breaking point had arrived. The case still lay on the marble, initials catching the light like a warning flare. Phones hovered above it, recording every angle. The manager straightened his tie as if that could patch the cracks spreading across his authority. Alexandra bent, not quickly, not with anger, but with precision. She lifted the leather case from the floor, brushed a speck of dust from its edge, and set it back on the counter with deliberate care. Then, slowly, she reached into her blazer pocket, not for ID, not for documents, for her phone. The click of the unlock echoed louder than it should have in the hushed lobby. She lifted it to her ear, voice calm, steady, surgical. "Activate internal protocol. Log every word spoken in this branch, starting 10 minutes ago." Oh. The room seemed to inhale all at once. On the other end, a voice replied instantly, clear, efficient. "Confirmed. Recording initiated. Incident tagged under Metropolitan Branch, time-stamped." The banker froze mid-dial, the receiver still in her hand. The guard blinked, his stance faltering. The crowd leaned in, unsure of what they had just witnessed. The manager scoffed, trying to mask unease. "What's that supposed to mean? You think some call center is going to save you?" Alexandra's gaze cut to him, cool and unwavering. "Number not a call center, my office." Her words landed heavy, drawing gasps from the witnesses. The young woman filming whispered into her mic, "She's not just calling for help, she's calling the shots." The man near the kiosk muttered, "She sounds like someone in charge." The banker snapped, desperate, "She's bluffing. That's all this is. Empty threats." But her hands trembled against the receiver. Alexandra didn't reply to her. She kept her phone to her ear, tone calm as stone. Mark the manager's direct quotes. "This bank isn't for your kind. You're a fraud. You don't belong here. Send to compliance and legal immediately." The assistant's voice came through, crisp and unshaken. "Already filed. Preliminary audit flagged. Next step?" Alexandra let the silence hang, then spoke 3 words. "Proceed to escalation." Oh. The lobby rippled. The witnesses exchanged glances, whispers rising like wind before a storm. The manager's smirk faltered. He barked again, louder, as though volume could drown reality. "She's nothing. Just noise with a phone. Don't let her play you." But the crowd no longer looked at him. They looked at her, the calm in the storm, the woman whose voice carried more authority in a whisper than his in a shout. The boy tugged at his mother's sleeve. "Mom, I think she's winning." His mother nodded, eyes fixed on Alexandra. "She already won. They just don't see it yet." The marble lobby, once a stage for humiliation, had shifted. Now it was an arena, and Alexandra Reid had just drawn the first line. The lobby was no longer still. It vibrated with whispers, the air charged with disbelief. Phones glowed brighter, catching every flicker of tension, every crack in the manager's authority. Alexandra lowered her phone from her ear, her hand steady, her breathing unshaken. She didn't need to shout. She only needed to speak. "My name," she said evenly, "is Alexandra Reid." The words landed like a stone dropped in still water, ripples cutting through every corner of the bank. The junior banker blinked, confusion tightening her face. "So, that means nothing." But the mother with the boy whispered sharply, "Wait, Reid? As in Reid Holdings?" Heads turned, whispers thickened. "Reid Holdings? No, it can't be. She doesn't look." Alexandra rested her hand lightly on the leather case, her initials gleaming under the fluorescent lights. Her gaze swept the room, not defensive, not pleading, but absolute. "I'm not here to scam you," she continued. "I own this institution. Metropolitan Bank is one of 6 subsidiaries under Reid Holdings, and the vault beneath your feet, the one you just told me I don't belong near, was funded by my signature." "Oh." The manager's jaw dropped, but no words came. His face drained from crimson to ash. The guard stepped back instinctively, the weight of his stance collapsing into hesitation. The banker stammered, No, That's not possible. You wouldn't come here alone. You wouldn't dress like this." Her words betrayed the very prejudice she thought she hid. Phones caught every syllable. The young woman filming couldn't contain her voice. "She owns it. She owns this bank." "Oh." The man near the kiosk laughed under his breath, the sound sharp with justice. "And they tried to throw her out." Alexandra didn't gloat. She didn't smile. She spoke with the calm of inevitability. "You looked at my skin, my suit, my silence, and decided none of it belonged here. But belonging isn't yours to give. This bank carries my name in every contract you've ever signed." The initials on the case AR were no longer mystery. They were proof. The boy's voice rang soft but clear. "She told them, she's the boss." His mother squeezed his hand, her eyes never leaving Alexandra. "Number, she's more than that. She's the owner." The lobby shifted. What had been a stage for humiliation was now a courtroom, and Alexandra Reid had just dropped the verdict. The manager stumbled, voice breaking. You can't prove." But the sentence collapsed under the weight of his own fear, because everyone in that marble hall already knew proof wasn't needed. Presence was enough. And Alexandra Reid had just claimed it. The silence that followed Alexandra's words wasn't empty. It was loaded, like a chamber cocked back before the trigger. The manager's mouth opened, but no sound came. His hands, once so firm on the counter, now trembled against the polished marble. He tried to steady himself with authority, but authority had just been stripped bare. The junior banker's smirk dissolved into panic. Her eyes darted toward the glass doors, toward the phones, toward the initials glowing faintly on the case. She's lying," she stammered. "She has to be. Owners don't walk in off the street." But the young woman filming cut her off, her voice sharp with conviction. "Owners don't need to ask for permission. That's why you can't see it." The guard, who had hovered so close minutes ago, stepped back a full pace. His hand slid away from his belt, his eyes dropping to the floor. For the first time, the weight of his stance wasn't directed at Alexandra, it was crushing him. Whispers grew louder. The man near the kiosk raised his voice. "I've banked here 20 years. If she says she owns this place, I believe her more than any of you." Another client clapped once, sharp and deliberate. Then another joined. The sound spread, scattered but undeniable applause in a lobby that had never heard it before. The manager spun toward the crowd, desperate. "Stop recording! Delete those videos! This is confidential!" But his words were drowned by the click and glow of more phones lifting higher. A teenage girl whispered into hers, "They humiliated the owner of the bank. This is history." The junior banker backed up, shaking her head. "I didn't know. I didn't—" Alexandra didn't respond. She didn't need to. Her silence was more damning than any accusation. The manager slammed his palm down one last time, but it no longer sounded like authority. It sounded like desperation. "This is a misunderstanding." A client near the entrance shouted back, "No, this is exactly what it looks like." The guard exhaled sharply, sweat beading down his temple. He muttered under his breath, barely audible, I need this job." Phones caught it anyway. The crowd's energy had flipped. What began as uneasy glances was now open defiance. People weren't just watching, they were standing with Alexandra. The mother with the boy raised her voice, steady and clear. "We see you. We see all of it." The boy echoed, his small voice carrying further than expected. "She's the boss. You tried to throw her out." The words hit harder than any gavel. The truth was undeniable, spoken by a child, amplified by 100 cameras. The lobby, once controlled by a handful of voices dripping with prejudice, now belonged to Alexandra Reid, and the ones who thought they held power manager, banker, guard stood exposed, trembling in the very building she owned. The applause faded into an expectant hush, the kind of silence that waits for a verdict. All eyes fixed on Alexandra, still steady, one hand resting lightly on the leather case. She lifted her phone again. Her voice was calm, precise, stripped of all wasted syllables. "Lock out the branch manager. Effective immediately." The response came through her earpiece before the manager could protest. "Confirmed. Access revoked." A single beep echoed from the manager's badge clipped to his belt. Red, not green, red. Gasps shot through the lobby. He tugged the badge, swiping it against the counter scanner in frantic denial. Red again. Locked. What is this?" His voice cracked, no longer booming but breaking. Alexandra didn't look at him. She continued, steady. Terminate the junior banker's credentials. Remove security clearance from staff ID ending in 4732. The banker froze, her ID vibrating faintly before buzzing red. The sound rang like a funeral bell for her career. "No, no, please," she whispered. Her confidence had collapsed into begging, but no one moved to shield her. Not the guard, not the crowd, not even the manager. Alexandra's gaze slid toward the security guard. He swallowed hard, shifting under the weight of her silence. "Your orders were clear," she said quietly, "and they were wrong. Stand down." His badge chimed once, then flatlined red. His hand slipped from his belt, hanging limp at his side. The crowd erupted, some gasping, some clapping, phones catching every flicker of panic on the faces of the fallen. The mother with her son nodded firmly, her voice carrying across the marble. "That's justice," the boy added. "She fired them." The manager's desperation boiled over. He slammed the counter, spit flying as he shouted, "You can't do this! I've worked here 20 years. Alexandra finally turned her eyes on him, gaze sharp enough to slice. "You worked here, past tense." The words landed like a gavel. Final, irreversible. The young woman filming whispered into her mic. She didn't even raise her voice, and they're gone. The man near the kiosk added, "I've never seen power used like that. Clean. No shouting. Just done." Alexandra lowered her phone, resting it gently atop the leather case. She didn't gloat. She didn't smile. She simply stood as the reality settled over the room. In less than 2 minutes, she had dismantled the very team that tried to erase her. The applause rose again, louder, longer this time, not scattered but unified, a chorus. And in the middle of it all, Alexandra Reid remained still. The storm had passed, and she was the eye that had never moved. The lobby was no longer a battlefield. It was a stage, and every witness knew how the story had ended. The marble floor still shimmered, but the real shine came from the clarity of truth hanging in the air. The manager slumped against the counter, badge dead, career finished. The junior banker stood frozen, lips moving without sound, as if words could reverse what the cameras had already immortalized. The guard kept his eyes down, his hands empty now, his stance no longer menacing but hollow. And then there was Alexandra Reid. She stood as she had from the start, anchored, calm, unbroken. Only now the silence around her was different. It wasn't loaded with prejudice. It was loaded with respect. She lifted her phone one last time, her voice steady. "Log this incident as resolved. Document all footage. Ensure compliance receives every second." "Confirmed," the assistant replied. "System sealed. Legal notified." Alexandra placed the phone back on the case. Her gaze swept the room, not fierce, not triumphant, but resolute. "To everyone here," she said, voice even but heavy, "you've just seen what happens when bias masquerades as policy. It ends. Here. Today." The words rippled across the crowd, cutting deeper than any raised voice could. "You thought I didn't belong," she continued. "But belonging is not granted by prejudice. It's written in truth, in dignity, in ownership. And that is something no one in this building can erase." She paused, letting silence carry the weight. Phones captured her stillness. The calm authority etched into her stance. The boy tugged his mother's sleeve again. "She's not just the boss," he whispered. "She's justice." His mother nodded, her eyes glistening. Alexandra picked up her case, brushed the brass lock once with her thumb, and stepped back from the counter. She didn't look at the fallen staff again. They were already shadows of their former power. She spoke one last time, words shaped like steel. "I don't need to record this moment. I am the result of it." The applause rose, this time not scattered, not hesitant, but full, like thunder rolling through the marble. Clients clapped, witnesses cheered, and the hum of cameras blended into a chorus of vindication. Alexandra Reid walked toward the glass doors, each step measured, unhurried, the crowd parting for her like an ocean for its tide. Behind her, the bank still buzzed with disbelief. Ahead of her, the city stretched wide, ready to carry the story. And the message was clear. Dignity doesn't shout. It doesn't beg. It stands. And when it reveals itself, no one can deny it.